Good morning and welcome to the Return Homestead. My name is Mike and my wife Marty and I homestead 6 acres in northeastern Kentucky. Today it's a day like any other day. There's just a lot of work to do on the homestead. We're going to look at trying to get some of our fence lines cleaned. We also have some work going on in the garden, but here in the early morning, it's time to take care of that frost free. The handle broke off of that thing just as winter was setting in, and we finally got the parts and some time to get it fixed, so let's go have a look at that. So it's a little bit of a crisp morning out here. There was some ice on the chicken's water this morning, so it did get below freezing last night. Got a good portion of our pile of compost taken away. It's already up in the garden. It is a little bit hot. Wish we had had another 6 months or so for this stuff to just kind of settle before we put it in the garden. But timing meant that we had to just get busy with it. The plants will be stunted. Eventually they'll settle in. Some of the microbial action will tie up some of that nitrogen and allow the plants to start using it. And they'll be able to grow usually later in the season. We've seen this before. When we grew in Nevada, we didn't have access to any compost there either. And we ended up growing in the manure that was left over from our neighbor's property from either his horse or his cows. And that was Nevada. Things didn't really compost out there unless you deliberately composted them. They just kind of dried up. So it was really just dried manure we were growing in. And then we've got our frost free over here. We did pick up some 50-gallon drums. So these are just some metal drums. We got these for $15 a piece, pretty good price. Be very careful if you're purchasing these things off of Facebook Market or something like that. You really don't know what was in these things. I know quite often people will tell you that, the barrels are food grade and all they ever contained was soy sauce, but you really don't know that for sure. Do your due diligence, but in the end, it's a great resource. We have several uses for these, including storing feed out here in the barn. I do want to scrub them out, clean them up before we get busy using them, but that means I need a working frost-free. This is our frost-free hydrant out here at the barn. Y'all saw me dig this thing out, and we put the dirt back in the hole. We've got it all packed back in. I do want to clean this up a little bit. When this gets wet, it's sticky, difficult to walk on. So I do need to clean this up, put some gravel here around the faucet to make it easier to access. But today we just need this thing to work. And right here is where the problem occurred. So when I lift up on that handle, you can see that the arm doesn't attach anymore. So why they made those things out of plastic, I have no idea. It has a specific mean time to failure. This one has failed. And we have purchased the replacement parts for this. Interestingly, the other Woodford products, which are much more sturdily built and don't use this plastic, have a repair kit that's about half the price and uses twice the number of parts. So the repair kit just comes in a little plastic bag, and all it is a new arm and bolt. Not really anything very complicated. It is an official, genuine Woodford part, so we're hopeful that this is going to go on easily. It's not an exact match for this part, so I'm a little dubious, but we'll get into this and see where we get. Before I can start working on this, I do need to get some water into the chickens, so you get an opportunity to see exactly how this thing operates. So the faucet's not actually broken, it's just that the handle doesn't work to lift up this piston. So there is a piston with a T on top of it that goes down through the pipe, and when you lift up on the piston, it actually pulls a rubber stopper up out of the valve, allows the water to flow up into the pipe. When you close the handle back down again, it pushes the piston back in, sealing off the hole down in the bottom. And when the pipe is not pressurized, there's a valve down there that will allow the water to release underground. Now, typically, these are going to be about 2 feet underground. This one's 3.5, 4 feet underground. So this is an exceptionally long pipe, much longer than it needs to be here in a Kentucky climate. This would be something you'd use up in northern Wisconsin or someplace like that. But it functions. We do know it's not leaking. The water company came out and they put a stethoscope on this thing. It allows them to listen for leaks. They didn't hear anything, so we know we're not leaking here. But to get water flowing, all I really have to do is lift up on that piston. And because of the size of the pipe, this does allow water to flow much faster than you would find in your standard home hydrant. So I could actually fill that bucket about 3 times as fast. I just need to be able to open it all the way, and it's too difficult to close if I do that by hand. So we got to get this thing fixed. It does save a lot of time, and it is our only source of water out here at the barn. Let me get this into the chickens real quick. And these poor chickens, they're just stuck in here on this dirt. Really hate having them just cooped up in here, especially when we got all this beautiful grass just on the outside of this run. So that is our next big project. We have got to get the fencing around these chickens. They need to be outside in the fresh air, sunshine, eating grass and bugs. Let's get these guys on out of here. Morning, chickens. Currently, we're getting more than 20 eggs a day out of both coops. Now, the silkies don't lay a lot of eggs. They're relatively small. And there's only 7 hens, so they'll lay anywhere between 4 and 5 eggs a day. And then the big chickens out here, really, I've lost count on how many hens we have. But we have collected as much as 26 eggs from them on a given morning. So we do get a significant amount of food from the chickens. We're getting somewhere close to 2 dozen eggs a day. And the eggs are exceptional food source, really. Perfect amount of protein, tiny bit of carbohydrates, a good bit of high quality cholesterol in the egg yolks. Yeah, we're not afraid of our cholesterol. We enjoy it. So we eat a lot of eggs around here. It's a great way to feed yourself. Looks like this old handle just comes apart in 2 pieces. Or at least that was the intent. I'm trying to find a separation point here. Someplace I can wedge in a screwdriver or something. Pry it apart. I can see how the pieces lock together. What I can't see is how you're expected to pull it apart again. The water pressure is enough to eventually lift that stopper up, so I got to work quickly here. There we go. There it is. So it was just this little clip that fit down inside of itself and locked together. And I can't push that stopper down, so I'm gonna have to move quickly from here to get this thing closed up. I'll hold that for a moment. So the new parts are made out of steel, and it looks like they're just going to fit over the arms on one side. So they sent a universal part that looks like it'll work with any one of their faucets. Just got to see how this thing's fitting on here. Out just like that. Okay, that's not too bad. So there's a little barrel that goes in between the two arms, and then a bolt and a nut. Pretty straightforward construction here. Let me give you a closer look. There's posts on the handle and posts on the piston, and these holes just slide over those posts, and then that gives us the tension we need to operate the piston. The barrel is going to go in between these two plates, and then the bolt goes through the center. Screw the nut on the other side. Pretty straightforward. Yeah, that's what we want. Locks down nice and tight. Excellent. Now I am noting a little bit of a leak up here on the top of the faucet. This is indicating to me that there's a pressure seal down inside of here, some sort of a seal where the piston runs up and down inside of here that is failing. So it's leaking a little bit right here at the top. I'm not that concerned about it because once you shut it off, it's shut down down below ground, below grade there. So this is not going to continue to leak. But it is something that'll need to be repaired probably in the next 3 to 5 years. Eventually that seal is going to fail altogether, and we'll just end up with water spraying out of the top of the faucet. But for now, problem solved. And so we come back full circle. We had a broken hydrant that led to a lot of different complications. You saw me having to haul water out here throughout the entire winter. Well, that was because of the hydrant. As soon as everything thawed up, we thought we had a problem with the hydrant leaking. We ended up digging that deep hole. And it was in that process that we started interacting with the water company, the folks that actually provide the water. And that indicated that there were some broken pieces in this system that weren't obvious and evident, like the handle. Because when we look in that box up at the top of the road, it's full of water. It's actually collapsed in on itself. It needs to be replaced. And there have been 2 crews out here that have had to pump that out just to look at the equipment inside of there. And neither one of them did anything about repairing the box. When I called the company and talked to them about the fact that we had a huge water bill, they agreed that we probably had a leak, and they did send people out who did look at the problem and helped me to troubleshoot it, and we found that it was their pressure regulator that was causing the problem. I made a simple request that they fix the bill. The reason we had used so much water was because of the failure of their equipment. And it took a whole month and another reading of the meter, and then I had to make 3 phone calls before I finally got someone on the phone who looked into it and discovered that yes, they had been the cause of the problem. They did correct the bill to their credit. But dealing with that outside system, that system from the world that we have to touch, that wasn't easy. And we've had no end of problems dealing with those. Y'all remember the fireplace. We had the gas logs in there that we wanted to try to get somebody to come and take a look at, and there was no one to come out and repair it. No one would come this far out from the city to look at it, to make the repair. Now, we did fortunately find a chimney company that was able to come out and install a wood stove for us, and that was our solution. They did a great job. But that was just one other indication of systems out there in the world that are not holding together the way that they're supposed to. We've had issues with the electrical as well. And we've had to make phone calls to the electric company to ask questions and to try to get them to do things. And it's almost impossible to even get someone on the phone. And when we try to go to the website to look up information about our account, we really can't find that information. We can pay the bill. They're happy to provide that kind of service. But access to account information, they just don't have it. And then there's the trash company. We've had no end of difficulties working with folks who pick up our waste. We have to take it out to the end of the road, which I don't mind. They come by and they pick it up right at the end of the driveway. The problem is that they use my driveway as a place to turn around. Well, I've got a gravel driveway. And when you back up a huge garbage truck with dualies on the back of it, you're tearing up that gravel. And that gravel is sitting on top of clay. And so I end up with these great big humps and lumps at the end of my driveway every time we have the trash picked up at the end of the week. So I talked to the driver about it, got his attention for a few minutes. We had a conversation about the difficulties he's facing trying to figure out where he's going to turn around other than the driveway. And he couldn't figure it out. He did try. And then we talked to a dispatcher who explained the complications, and I agreed with him. There's a difficulty here. There's just not any good place to turn around. It's a one-lane gravel road, and my driveway presents the last opportunity to turn around before you get to the river. So I asked that they take a longer look at it, that they see if they can find another solution, or if at the very least they couldn't, then do something about repairing the end of my driveway to make sure that it doesn't get torn up when their truck backs up on it. And I waited a month. No reply. Nobody ever got back to me. So I finally called them and I told them, hey, this Friday, let's make that our last pickup. Let's just go ahead and stop the service. And to their credit, I got somebody who was a good customer service representative, and she immediately put in the cancellation order to cancel the service. But then she insisted on documenting what I told her about the difficulties I was having with my driveway and them backing up in the driveway. She documented it, but she said nobody else had. So the systems that are out there that are supposed to be operating to provide us with the services that we need in order to maintain basic life. That would be our electricity, our water, and our waste removal. Those systems are breaking down, folks. That's why we spend the time to make sure we keep things in good working order, and why I do all of my own repairs wherever possible. And that's why we encourage you to return to the land, return to labor, and return to life. The systems of the world are starting to come apart. They're coming unraveled a little bit faster every day. And there needs to be a remnant of people that are out here on the fringes who have decided they're going to take responsibility for what happens in their life and not depend on the systems that the world has put together. And we're inviting you to come out here and join us. We've had lots of problems since we got out here dealing with those systems. But we've also found peace and contentment. And we're enjoying our days now. I'm not getting up to jump in a car and commute with everybody else down a freeway congested with cars, choking myself with fumes to go sit in an office under artificial light all day. I'm out here in the open, fresh air, lots of sunshine, plenty of chickens crowing in the background. It's a much better way to approach a day. So come on out here, find your little piece of happiness out here in the middle of nowhere. Get yourself out on the fringes. Take responsibility for your own life by returning to the land, returning to labor, and returning to life. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, would you please take a moment and go ahead and do that? While you've got the window open, hit that thumbs up icon. That's going to let the algorithm know you enjoyed the video, so they'll share it out with more people. then we'd ask you to take one additional step. Find some social media somewhere that you can share our video with other people. We want to be an encouragement to everyone else who's struggling, dealing with that groundhog day of a commute every single day. There are alternatives, there are options. You just got to avail yourself of them. We'll see you next time.